Baltimore charges past L.A. The Bills went full Wizard of Oz, melted in the rain, and how one doink changed the entire postseason. All that and more, because it is time for Sunday Night Blitz. It's also time, apparently, for puberty, as my voice decided to crack a little bit in that. But you know the drill. He's Frank Schwab. I'm Jason Fitz. And together, like Voltron, we form one ginormic, ass-kicking robot known as Sunday Night Blitz. My friend, we are taping this immediately after Sunday Night Football. We will get to that. It was a weird week, and I want to stress to everybody, we are going to cover all the action, which includes the Thursday, Friday action that some people might have missed while they were gorging on some Thanksgiving goodies and maybe too much to drink like I was. It will include all of the action that we saw throughout the day. We'll get to all of it, good sir. But first and foremost, happy Thanksgiving. We didn't get to hang out on Thanksgiving. I hope it was perfect for you.
It was good. It was very good. I mean, not good football or on Black Friday either, but we saw a Hail Mary return for a pick six. Never seen that before. So one weird thing we're talking about right as we came on this week, as a betting man, 12 favorites covered this week. That's weird in itself that there was some kind of predictability in the NFL this week. Kind of a strange, weird week of football with some teams losing games they probably had no business losing.
It was a strangely predictable week in the sense that you mentioned, but also a very telling week. I think this week we learned more than we've learned about teams in most weeks this season, because we're finally starting to see real identity and constants that are cutting through week after week after week. And we saw some of those. One of those came in what was, we knew, going to be the biggest game of the day for most people. Philadelphia taking on Buffalo. And I say that because Philly gets the overtime win. Dramatic. It had everything you could possibly want. I get all of that. In the rain, in Philly, it had it all, Frank. But I was watching it, and I felt like every conversation you and I have had on this show or on our text about Buffalo was encapsulated in this one game. Moments Josh Allen was amazing. Moments Josh Allen was turning the ball over. Moments it looked like they'd figured out a way to throw the ball in the rain, and moments it looked like they had no offense other than just chucking the ball. It was everything good and bad about Buffalo in one game.
You are absolutely correct. I mean, this is a game where you get to the end of the game and you say, end of regulation anyway, and you say, how did the Bills not win this by 14? And you knew they weren't going to win in overtime. At least I did. I was like, this team's going to find a way to lose. And at some point, I love analytics. I'm an analytics guy. I follow it. I read it. I study it, all that kind of stuff. And I believe in it. But at some point, it also is part of your DNA that you find ways to lose games. It's also part of your DNA, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, that you find ways to win games. They got completely outplayed today. Completely. They had no business being in that game. Jake Elliott makes a miracle kick at the end of regulation. That was awesome. The Bills, okay, real quick, I know that this is probably going to get glossed over, but the Bills have 20 seconds left in a timeout. They wasted a timeout icing the kicker. Why? I don't know. That doesn't even work. So whatever. But you still have one timeout. You have a quarterback with maybe the strongest arm in the league, and you just take a knee? Okay, we're going to go. We're not going to try. Oh, no, officials don't like calling defensive pass interference. That never happens. What do you do? Sean McDermott is just up against it so bad this year. I don't think he's a terrible coach. I really don't. But he's having a bad season, and he's making decisions that are causing them to lose games. And again, it just comes to the point of, it was early in the game. I was tweeting about this in the first half of, they're just letting the Eagles hang around. They're making all these mistakes. I thought Josh Allen was really, really good in this game. He did throw the one bad pick, but he's really good in this game. But you just can't overcome it. And especially when your whole team revolves around you, as we talk about week after week. Where's the running game? Where's the bounce? Where's somebody other than Diggs? Where's anything for this Bills team? They're 6-6 now. And you know their next two games, I don't know if you've looked at the schedule. Their next two gaams, and they have a bye. They play at the Chiefs. They host the Cowboys. They could be 6-8 like that. And it is just unbelievable for a Bills team we thought could win a Super Bowl.
This is a wasted year for Buffalo. And it's
Seems
not
like
just that we thought they could. Is that we thought they should. This was supposed to be a breakthrough. At some point you look at it and say, it's all got to come together. They found the most freakish ways to lose. To think that they're now basically wasting a year in the Super Bowl window with Josh Allen, this is the thing that becomes unforgivable in 5 to 10 years when you're looking back at this chapter of Bills football. And, you mentioned the way the game played out. There is this moment where you're watching two different teams. And this is the craziest stat I've seen about Philadelphia. This year, they are 4-0 straight up in games where they trail by more than 10. And in the last 12 games, they're 8-4 in that same one. Go back to last season. Yeah. They find ways. Doesn't matter how much they're down. They're like, all right, they're the Undertaker. They sit back up. They're like, fine, we got you. Like, they continually come back. It is alarming when you watch part of the DNA, the fabric of a team, part of the fabric of the Eagles in this game shine through, because you just knew they were going to get it. And the fabric of who the Bills have become this season, you knew they were going to blow it. And they both stayed true to that. Like, statement win for Philly, but statement loss for Buffalo.
I agree. So you agree with me that this isn't just like luck where, you're at a blackjack table on a heater and every time you hit on 16, a 5 shows up, right? Like, this is part of both teams' DNA, isn't it? Where we can look at this point differential, DVOA, and all this stuff and say the Bills are this good, the Eagles are getting lucky, whatever. But I assume you agree that this is kind of who these teams are, and there's a reason this keeps happening.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the point differential this year is historic. No team has ever been to this point in the season and had a plus 100 or greater point differential with a losing record. That's where the Bills are. Congratulations. I'll slow clap that because you're still finding ways to lose it. Like, you mentioned that we needed to see more. We talked about one-dimensional throughout the course of the year. Gabe Davis was great in this game. This was the other. Gabe goes 6 catches, 105 yards, gets a touchdown on 12 targets. Like, Gabe Davis was a big part of this game. Even when you look up and down, I mean, this includes Josh Allen, obviously, they ran the ball 40 times for 173 yards. Like, if I told you coming into this game that you would have all of these numbers, you'd say, okay, Buffalo won that game. They didn't, because it's little things. It's the little things that seem to prevent them from winning these games. And guess what? If they were ever to get to the playoffs, same thing. Little things against great teams, you can't win unless you execute.
Right. It's James Cook dropping a pass that should have been a touchdown. It's a bunch of penalties early in the game. It's Tyler Bass missing field goals. Like, I get it. Yeah, the course collar probably should have been called. Whatever. It didn't. Like, the referees didn't cost them that any more than they would have cost the Eagles for that roughing the passer penalty. That was absolutely obnoxious late in the game. So I agree with you. But even, like, you talked about Gabe Davis, this perfectly encapsulates the Bills. Gabe Davis shows up, has a huge game. Like you said, 100 yards, one of the dominant players on the field. But when they really needed it on that third down, there's a miscommunication and they just miss it. Like, Gabe Davis goes deep.
You are so right. You are so right. Like that one play. I hadn't even thought of that. Go ahead.
That sums it up. But Gabe Davis was awesome. Josh Allen was awesome. But when they needed to be awesome to win the game, there's a miscommunication. Josh throws it inside. Gabe goes outside. Gabriel Davis slams his helmet down. Josh Allen's obviously frustrated because there's just a miscommunication. That's the 2023 Buffalo Bills, where they play good football, but they don't play winning football somehow.
Yeah, and somehow the opposite holds true for Philadelphia, who absolutely goes off in this game as well. Jalen Hurts, another big game.
He won MVP today, right? Like, I mean, I don't love that pick, but I think it's obvious right now Jalen is winning MVP, correct?
Yeah, I mean, to me, yeah, 100%. In a year where maybe we're trying to give it to Tyreek, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But yeah, no, I mean, Hurts goes 18-31 for 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, but also gives 14 carries for 65 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. I said stats don't always tell the story. I really thought those did. And then you mentioned, like, when they needed a play. When they needed a play, both Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, it just felt like every time they were stuck in a pickle, somehow, some way, those two were going to find a way to come down with the football. It's just like the DNA is different on that team. That team finds a way to beat you. It shows in the numbers.
Jalen Hurts, first half, he had 33 yards. He was really struggling in the first half. Bills were playing great defense on him. But then he has that stretch in the second half where I think he threw 3 touchdowns on 4 passes. It's just, okay, that's part of who he is. He's a guy, he does make winning plays. He's a heck of a quarterback. I mean, he probably will win MVP. And you know what? He's not the worst pick in the world. Like, he does make these plays that affect the outcomes of games. And he certainly did. I mean, he's a guy who, and I think part of the reason he has all these comebacks, you talked about being down 10 plus, he just doesn't get fazed by it. Let's keep plugging away. We're fine. We're good. He's that even keel dude, and he just finds a way to make plays to drag his team back into the game like he did today.
Well, sometimes you make plays, sometimes you miss plays. And the other huge game today, it really changed the entire AFC playoff picture. And it all came down to a doink. and I can't believe it. You've got Jacksonville taking on Houston, and it was a great game. Low scoring, 24-21 is your final. But this all came down to a long kick attempt, and Houston tries for the kick. And for anyone that didn't see it, the kick looked clean. The kick looked good. It would have been a career long, and it just doinked off the middle of the crossbar, not the back, not the front. Like it was inches away from being good. And as a result, Houston takes the loss. Now Jacksonville vaults up the playoff standings, and that could end up being the difference. Is that the opportunity slips away. A doink changes the entire playoff picture in the AFC.
Yeah, you're not kidding. This was one of those games where the entire division just turns on it, because had the Houston won this game, they have the tiebreaker from season sweep and are tied with the Jaguars with 6 games to go, whatever it is. If Jacksonville wins this, they got a 2-game lead, and the tiebreaker is no longer there for Houston for the season sweep. So this was just a massive game in that division. Like you said, it came down right to the end. I thought C.J. Stroud played excellent. I know that it's just keeping on gushing about C.J. Stroud, even though he loses, but he really played well in this game, gave his team a chance to win, but couldn't make the one play needed to get him in field goal range. And so I think D'Amico Ryans has had a great year, and he's going to be a great coach. I think he made the wrong call today. 4th and 12, when they trotted out the field goal unit, I'm like, he ain't making this. He's just not. And he never made a kick of 50 yards or more in his career. I thought that this is just desperate. 4th and 12 isn't great to be in anyway, but with that quarterback, with those receivers, I would have trusted that more than a kind of a miracle 58-yard field goal at that point from a guy who's never done it before. He hits the crossbar, and what was otherwise, like you said, kind of an excellent kick. I mean, he kicked it right where he should have. He just couldn't get it there. He's not Justin Tucker, So it's an unfortunate loss for the Texans. There's still very, very bright future in front of them, but this is now the Jaguars division. I can't imagine a scenario where they don't win this, because also they're playing pretty good ball. I think Trevor Lawrence is doing what he did last season. First half, it's up and down, and all of a sudden he hits his hot streak late in the year. He was excellent today. He made a lot of big plays. Calvin Ridley's coming along. This offense struggled to run the ball at times, but they still got it done. I thought this was just a great win for the Jaguars, rebounding from getting embarrassed by Texans at home to come back and give them revenge in Houston.
Yeah, and you mentioned they didn't run the ball consistently well, but ETN is one of those guys that when he pops, right? So, there's still a threat for them even when they're not running the ball. And I found myself, and this is going to be weird to say for a lot of people, but this game, and when you talk about the playoff ramifications, Jacksonville, if the playoffs were to start today, would be the 3 seed. Before the rest of the action played out, they had a shot at the 1 seed. They still do. It should be pointed out. As a result of the loss, Houston falls all the way out of the playoffs because they do not have the tiebreaker. What's interesting is that the Colts rise above them. We're in a spot right now where Houston, Indianapolis, and Jacksonville are all 3 viable, realistic playoff teams. Like, we thought AFC East might be the best division, then midway through, we were giving it to the AFC North. Right now, the best division in the AFC clearly looks like the South, because the Texans still played really well in this game. And the Jags were everything the Jags can be when the Jags are really good. Their pass rush was getting home. Their Josh Allen looked really good in this game. Trevor Lawrence had some throws. Yeah. And Trevor Lawrence was lights out accurate with the football several times. It feels like Jacksonville's found their rhythm, and they're an 8-3 that's actually a really underappreciated 8-3 right now to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. They're that team you want to play in the playoffs, especially Trevor keeps this momentum going, finishes this season strong like he did last season. Not a team, I don't know how close they are really to being a true championship contender, but a team that pretty clearly is going to make the playoffs now. And why can't they win a game or two? There's a lot of ingredients here you really, really like from a team. And again, with the Texans, I look at this loss as you're probably still a year away, and it's okay. You don't want to lose this game. You're disappointed. But at the end of the day, I think you're going to look back, if they don't make the playoffs this season, and still say it's a heck of a football season. You can look back at this game and be like, C.J. Stroud made a ton of plays. He's a heck of a quarterback. Tate Dell's a heck of a player. Nico Collins is finally broken out. D'Amico's a right hire. Everything is pointing up for the Texans. They're just not there with the Jaguars yet. Yeah,
they have every building block you could possibly want right now. Now, that brings us to talking about the playoffs. Another team in a huge game today. There was a bit of a prove-it game, and, I've got plenty of crow to eat on this one, because the Broncos went out and kicked the snot out of Cleveland. And, right now the Broncos lose in the tiebreaker, but they have the same record as the Colts and Texans. They've climbed up to 6-5. They won 5 straight games. And this was a really convincing win where we saw their defense play well against the, putrid Browns offense. That's fine. But more importantly to me, Russ looks really good against the best defense he's faced all year. It's just, this continues the ascension of Sean Payton's offense into Russ's development, into some diligence with the way they call the plays. Like, a chef's kiss to the way the Broncos pulled this game off. They were clearly the better team on the field.
Yeah, imagine me saying this sentence, 2 months ago. The Denver Broncos are ahead of the Buffalo Bills right now in the standings and have the tiebreaker. Like, what? Like, it's going to be hard for the Bills to jump over the Broncos to get a playoff spot. What are we doing? Like, I've talked about it a lot. I'm based out in Colorado, and I can only tell you what it was like when this team was 1-4, really. When they went to 1-5 with that loss at Kansas City, people were like, wow, defense played a lot better. It was at least not doom and gloom. But when they were 1-4, I mean, everybody wanted Russell Wilson gone. Everybody was like, Sean Payton's a bum. This defense is the worst we've ever seen. Why haven't we fired Vance Joseph? I had friends of mine being like, I'm not going to games anymore. I'm not even watching the games anymore. I've been a fan of my whole life, but I'm sick of this team. I'm not watching them the rest of the season because they're just wasting my time. I'd never seen this from Broncos fans where they were so apathetic, not just mad because they've been mad a lot since 2015, but apathetic. They gave up. This was the worst team of football, or one of, there's a few contenders this year, but easily one of the worst teams of football, to the point people were bringing up that Sean Payton video of him talking about some team's going to tank for Caleb Williams. Is that kind of player? And then people were like, well, obviously the Broncos are tanking because they're that bad. And now they're basically right in the playoff race. They've won 5 in a row. And the wins are not just garbage wins either. We're talking about beat the Packers. That win is aging pretty well right now. Beat the Chiefs, beat the Bills, beat the Vikings, and beat the Browns. Those 4 teams all could make the playoffs. Bills might not, but they're obviously a playoff quality-ish team. The Broncos just turned their season. I can't remember a team like this. There's been other teams that have started 1-3, 1-4, whatever it is. But it's like, okay, they lost that game by this field goal, this bad bounce, this turnover. The Broncos are just getting run off the field in most games. Nothing against your Raiders, but they lost their Raiders at home to start the year. They let the Commanders come back and beat them at home. This was a bad Broncos team that just turned it around on a whim. I can't explain it, man. I wrote about these guys on Tuesday for Power Rankings, and I like to be like, this is why they turned it around. This is why. I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know what could have possibly happened to turn this team around. It's not like somebody came back from injury. It's not like they started a philosophical change. They're just winning games when they were just getting their behinds kicked before.
And I think efficiency is, again, a word I'm going to use here that explains some of what we've seen from them offensively. Russ, he completed 13 passes today. Like, that's just not a huge number. And he ran the ball 11 times for 34 yards, right? Like, most of that coming on one.
Was like, that's where the stats lie. Because if you watch this game, you're like, Russ made some big plays with his legs.
Exactly.
Yeah, he didn't end up with a great stat line, but yeah. Go on.
Well,
you're talking about efficiency. You're absolutely right.
Javonte, 18 carries for 65 yards. It just, watching it felt far more impactful than the numbers looked. Like, I was genuinely surprised when I sat down and looked at the stat sheet after this and thought, man, this is not giving the Broncos credit, and it's actually giving way too much credit, at this point to Cleveland. Like, I don't think Cleveland belonged to that conversation at all. Like, they just got dominated, and Cleveland's offense was a joke. There's just no nice way to say it. Cleveland's offense was a joke in this game.
Yeah, most teams, you lose a starting quarterback, you're in bad shape, and they never should have traded Joshua Dobbs, but whatever. What's done is done. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is just not ready. He might be a good quarterback down the road, but he's not ready. And he got knocked out in this game by a huge hit from Baron Browning, who I think got penalized for hitting a quarterback too hard. Like, that was not roughing the passer. It just wasn't. Like, I'm sorry. The referees had a bad day today, and that's across the league. There was a lot of justifiable complaining about officials today. I thought that was one of the most egregious calls where Baron Browning just hit Dorian Thompson-Robinson as hard as you're going to see a quarterback get hit. He got hurt. It sucks. I don't want to see him get hurt, but it wasn't an illegal hit to me. PJ Walker goes in there, and you're like, well, probably Joe Flacco starts next week. And it's just kind of depressing if you're a Browns fan. Like, this season had so much promise, and now Myles Garrett's hurt too. So, yeah, you're right. This Browns team it's very good. They're having a good season, but you could just kind of see where the season's heading. Even, let's say you squeeze out enough wins to make the playoffs. Okay, then what? You think Joe Flacco's taking you anywhere? It just stinks for a Browns team. Legitimately, if Deshaun Watson stayed healthy, played, continued that momentum he had in that Ravens game, right? Like, last time we saw him playing against the Ravens, had a huge game on that high ankle sprain and now broken shoulder. if he keeps that momentum going, we'd be sitting here tonight talking about like, man, this Browns team can win a Super Bowl, can't they? And now we're stuck with this Browns team that even if you make the playoffs, what good does it do? Because you're not winning any games when you get there.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm sure we'll do this soon. Like if you just went in and out on the teams we've talked about so far, like I'm out on Cleveland making the playoffs. I'm out, I think, on Buffalo making the playoffs. And I'm not willing to say today that I'm out on Houston or Denver. Like that tells you how
and you're not out on Indy yet. When I tell you the quarterbacks they got coming up, you're not going to be out on Indy.
I'm not out on Indy yet. No, I'm not on Indy yet. No, we'll get to Indy. Before we get to the rest of the Sunday action, though, let's go all the way back in time. Let's go back. Let's do a little lightning round here. I want to get back through all the Thanksgiving games because, if you were like me, if most people out there listening right now, hopefully you were just wildly drunk in the casino because that's what I did on Thanksgiving. So you had to go back and rewatch it all, which is what I forced myself to go do because I'm a glutton for punishment. Let's go through some of the games and just see if you have any big takes coming after. We'll start with the first game was Green Bay taking on the Lions, and I just sat there shell-shocked. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I was eating my Thanksgiving panini that they had at the sports book while I was losing vast amounts of money. And I was thinking, what in the hell am I watching Detroit do? Like, Detroit's in the questionable portion now because I feel like I've been backing them every week, Frank, and now I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, I get it. It was first play of the game. Jordan Love hits Christian Watson for, I believe, 54 yards. And you're like, uh-oh. Like, immediately you knew, like, this might not be like your typical like Lions are going to run over the Packers like they did earlier in the season at Lambeau and didn't turn out that way. We just had to say this. Like I gave up on Jordan Love like 3 weeks ago. I think it was a Raiders game where I was basically like, I'm out. Like this guy is not it. He is not it at all. He's played really good ball since then. I had 3 straight really good games for him. I thought he was excellent in that game on Thanksgiving. I don't know what's going on with the Lions. Like there's just a weird slump out of nowhere where the Bears should have beat them, but they're the Bears. The Packers did beat them, which shouldn't happen to you at home. All that talk about the number 1 seed is probably off the table right now because the Eagles aren't coming back to them. A terrible loss for the Lions. And I'm wondering, I'm like you, I'm like, should I be out on the Lions now? Is this a questionable team or is this just a team that really doesn't know how to handle success, having a midseason lull with a short week and all this? But the last 2 games have been concerning for them. There's no way around that.
Yeah, I think they need a slump buster. And we've seen Philly get through a slump. We've seen San Francisco over the years get through a slump. We don't have no idea how the Lions will react to that. Next game up on the docket from Thursday, the Cowboys absolutely just embarrassed Washington. So much so that Jack Del Rio was fired after the game by Washington defensive coordinator was fired after the game because it was a 45-10 game where it felt like, the Cowboys may have taken their foot off the gas a little bit. Like this felt like it could have been one of those 60-10 games to me, Frank. Like this was a bludgeoning, and I'm a little surprised Ron Rivera still has a job right now. Like I know that there's not other options, but like, what are you doing?
No, I agree completely. I think it almost smells like ownership came to Ron and said, "You're gonna make a change, or you're gonna get rid of you." Like it's got to be one or the other. And he's like, "Okay, Jack Del Rio's got to go." Like I don't get it because I've been talking about this for a while now. Washington. Give Eric Bieniemy a chance. You don't know what you got. Maybe he stinks as a head coach, but you don't know. Give him 6-week audition, see what happens. Sometimes you find something there where Ron Rivera's not the answer. He's done. And the Cowboys just beat another bad team. Okay, good for them. I mean, they beat up bad teams, and that's a sign of a good team sometimes, but they still got to do it against a quality team before I'm really going to sing the praises of the Cowboys.
Yeah, and by the way, I just looked on Tankathon, and as it stands right now, Washington would have the 5th pick in the draft. So, obviously, new ownership going to spend a ton of money. They'll have a big draft pick to work with out of that. That's about the only thing they can look forward to right now. The next game up on the docket stunned me. I'm not going to lie. Like, as the guy that's been over here with the Purdy flags being like, Brock Purdy's pretty good. Like, as that guy, San Francisco... They were kind to us. They let us all figure out we could go to sleep at halftime. They just demolished Seattle 31-13 in another game that didn't feel as close as the score, frankly. And I just kept watching Seattle thinking, what is the identity right now of this football team? Like, they have too many weapons to play as poorly as they played. San Francisco just absolutely took them out of the game.
This was one of those games where if you were actually watching it, not just checking a score afterwards, you were stunned by how the 49ers just destroyed them. Like at some point, Seattle was stuck on like 19 yards. It was like almost halftime, and it was below 20. I know. Geno's taking a big step back. Like he's just not that dude right now. But a lot of this was just the 49ers are that team. Like they're the one team I really don't question. Eagles, I might question some. Like, can you keep doing this high wire act, whatever? The 49ers, when they're playing this well, man, they look great. And they look just unbelievable for about 3 quarters on Thanksgiving before they just decided, well, it's been a short week. We don't really want to embarrass Seattle. We got no reason to, or else they could have. If they just wanted to be like, you know what, we're going to beat you 49-zip today, I think they could have. I really think that there was that big of a mismatch.
And it was the weirdest combination of two different things in the sense that, to me, nobody from Seattle ever felt open. Like, it just felt like the coverage was so sticky for San Francisco in that game. And then on the other side, it felt like they were running away from the Seattle defenders. Like everybody was open. 5, 6, 7 yard passes were becoming 12, 13, 14 yard passes because everybody just felt like they had turbo button and they were one step ahead. Like I got to be honest, I was really stunned by the way that game played out. A statement to San Francisco. I agree with you. They are the one team I think in the entire NFL right now that I don't have a single but about. Like they're butt free, if that is a phrase. I'm gonna make that a phrase.
That 3-game losing streak just looks a little fluky right now because every time I watch that team, pretty much before that and after that, I'm like, that's the one that looks great most of the time.
Yeah, well, nothing looked great on Black Friday. First time ever we've had a Black Friday NFL game. Amazon had a very captive audience that they paid handsomely for. Did a nice job with the commercials.
How do you feel about the Friday night? Did you like it? It was weird. It's like, it was Friday afternoon, like 2 o'clock. I watched an NFL game. It was strange to me.
Yeah, I didn't like the time. So, like, I'm a big Black Friday shopper. I like to go out and be like amongst the people. Like, I like the chaos. I'm not buying anything. I just like the chaos of the Christmas spirit.
Come on, stop. You just go to like Target just to see like the world burn?
Yeah. Like just to be around like I'll put my pods in and listen to Christmas music if I don't like what's happening there, and just like
watching people
out,
fight over like 50-inch TVs for like $50. Yeah.
Yes, that's the whole goal. So like, I don't know. It just felt weird to me that like it was a little too late in the day, but not late enough. Like it wasn't Friday night. It wasn't Friday at noon, which would have made more sense to me. Like sit down with my leftovers. Friday in the middle of the afternoon felt a little weird to me. And, it's the whole Amazon thing. Like you're captive. You can't turn the channels. So like it bums me out when I got a bad football game and I can't just be like, I'll come back to this in a minute. Miami just embarrasses the Jets 34-13. The best part about that is we saw a Hail Mary interception return for a touchdown.
Have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen that?
I've never seen it.
I haven't like researched or looked to see if somebody else researched or anything, but I'm sitting there watching it and you could tell right away. It was like Javon Holland starting to run out and you're like, oh, this is like, the Alabama kick six or Auburn kick six. I'm sorry. Like many years ago where it was like, oh, there's nobody left to tackle this dude. Like, unless an offensive lineman gets him or Tim Boyle trips him up somehow, this guy might go to the distance. I've never seen that before. And as I wrote, like, only the 2023 Jets could do this. Like, it just was such a comedy of errors. Like, this Jets team is so bad. It's so hard. It's the same exact season as last year. The same exact season where it's like midway, late-ish in the season. You're like, wow, this defense might carry him to the playoffs. And then they just break after a while. Like, we can't do this every single week for 17 games. It's just not going to work that way. The Jets, I feel so bad for their fans. They deserve better than this. And it's just unfortunate that Rodgers got hurt.
I struggle to figure out, yes, it's unfortunate that Rodgers got hurt. But as I'll continue to die on this hill, we've seen other teams this year lose their starting quarterback and still be competitive. Like top to bottom, the Colts roster is not as good as the Jets roster. The Colts also lost their starting quarterback, and the Colts are sitting right now in what would be the last wild card spot. Like the Vikings, top to bottom, are not as good a roster as the Jets. They lost their starting quarterback, and they're still out here at least being competitive. Like we as a general football society want to make this all about Zach Wilson and what might have been for Aaron Rodgers. I'm looking squarely at the building right now saying, what about everybody else? Like there are 53 players on the active roster. None of them are playing at the level they need to play when you lose your starting quarterback. The coaches aren't coaching at the level they need to coach. Like everything is broken for the Jets, and it's oversimplification in my mind to make it simply about Aaron Rodgers because I'm watching other teams navigate the same waters and do it better.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree. I will, and I think you do agree with me. If Aaron Rodgers was healthy, we're talking probably about them as a top 8 team. Super Bowl contender. Think so, right? Like maybe their offensive line was going to derail everything, but maybe not. Maybe this is just so bad that even Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to fix this thing. I don't know. I do put it a lot of this at the feet of the quarterback. They're just a non-functioning offense with those guys. But I get what they needed to do. They needed to not be in this position, basically, either with a better backup quarterback or a better talent around them, better offensive line, whatever it is. There's a big failure with the Jets right here, and it's not just because Rodgers got hurt. I'll definitely cop to that.
If I'm Woody Johnson, I'm looking around the building and I'm saying, man, did everybody not named Aaron Rodgers do a good enough job of stepping? We say next man up. Did everybody in the building, coaches and players, really absorb next man up and try it? Because I think it's pretty disastrous how bad the Jets have looked at times this year, not just because of the quarterback position. Although quarterback is a huge fail for them. Overall, though, I like the Black Friday. Were you out on Black Friday football? Like, it's just
okay. I thought you meant Black Friday watching people fight over $10 pairs of jeans at Walmart.
No. Yeah, I mean, you're out of that.
Yeah,
okay, fine.
Dude, I don't do that like you, man. That's weird, man. Like,
you
really are a chaos guy, aren't you? I hate to see your YouTube search, man. That's probably a little scary.
You are 1,000% right. Like, I am just an agent of chaos. I want in on the chaotic fun. I liked it, but I'm also, as you know, and as everyone that watches on Yahoo knows, like, I do so much with college football. I love college football, and Black Friday is often a big college football day for me. Like, I didn't love having to swing my attention over to the NFL, but you know,
I'm okay with some days off with the NFL. I am. Probably it's my job, so I like days off of my job too. But yeah, I don't think we need a Black Friday game going forward. But the NFL is eventually going to be on like 7 days a week. Like, it's just where we're heading.
Also, they made money on it. As long as they made money on it, they ain't going to stop doing it.
They make money rolling out of bed. Yeah.
So the money game today, look at that. Look at that transition. Back to the Sunday action as we get through everything. There was another great game. And I do mean great. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed watching the Colts today. And I text, like, to peek behind the curtain. The Colts beat Tampa Bay 27-20. And it was funny because I actually texted the guys on the show and said, man, is it just me or is Gardner Minshew a legitimate starting quarterback in the NFL? Now, right after that, he throws a pick and you're like, okay, never mind. I take it all back.
You changed him so bad. I was mad at you.
I did.
Being the guy who bet on the Colts. I was like, come on, Fitz. Killing me.
I mean, but I'm watching it and I'm thinking, my God, like, look, I'm not saying he's a world beater. I'm not saying he's in the same, like, I'm not building around him the way I would build around Joe Burrow or CJ Stroud. But right now, like, every team in the league that might need a quarterback next year that can't get one in the draft that they love, like, I'd be totally comfortable saying, hey, we're going to roll the dice with Gardner and figure this out. Like, I genuinely have been impressed with Gardner Minshew's ability to continue to run this offense with the development of the receivers for the Colts. Like, just across the board, the Colts are really, they look like a solid, good football team, and they showed that today.
They do. Really well coached, a couple good running backs, good receiver, and Michael Pittman. Their defense is, their corners stink. But other than that, their defense is pretty solid. I like this Colts team too well enough. I don't think they're a good team, but I did want to get to this. We might have talked about this last week. I can't remember, but I've written about it a little bit. The next 5 quarterbacks are going to play, unless there's a benching, unless there's an injury, something like that. Listen to these 5. Will Levis, Jake Browning, Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, and Aiden O'Connell. This is a 6-5 football team that could win all 5 of those games. And I'm not saying they will win all 5 because they're not great themselves. All those teams are saying, oh, we get Gardner Minshew this week. But if you look at the slate they have left, they don't really play a great team until I think they get the Texans in week 17 or week 18, something like that. They could rattle off some wins here. We're looking up and we're like, wait, how the heck did the Colts get the 10 wins? It's happening, people. I'm warning you. You heard it here first. Don't be surprised when you look up in late December and the Indianapolis Colts are pretty much locked into a playoff spot because of this stretch they got coming up.
Sometimes let's oversimplify. If I look at a matchup and I say, man, I see the better coach and the better quarterback on this side, I'm going to lean that way. And when you just talk about the teams they're going to take on, they'll have the better quarterback in every, like you mentioned, Will Levis. I'd rather have Gardner Minshew than Will Levis. Who's after? Now, yeah. Who's after Will?
Jake Browning. Of course, you're going to take Minshew there. Kenny Pickett. I mean,
I'm
they will get them in a better. Yeah, I'm taking Minshew. Desmond Ridder, Minshew all day.
Minshew, yep.
And then Aiden O'Connell has shown some things. I don't think he's been terrible. I take Minshew. So, yes, and I'm not saying like the the Pittsburgh defense can't win that game against Indy, or the Falcons don't put together a run game against Indy, whatever it shall be. But the Colts have an opportunity here. They're not facing 2007 Tom Brady in the stretch or anything. They got some really winnable games coming up. And I mean, get your Steichen Coach of the Year tickets right now, because if they make the playoffs, he's going to be in that conversation. I mean, I think he's done a heck of a job overcoming the injury to his starting quarterback.
This is a bonus year. This was supposed to be a development year for Anthony Richardson anyway. And now they get in this situation where, my God, I think it's stunning. The job that Steichen has done, it is truly stunning, the turnaround for this organization from the way the fans felt a year ago right now to the way they feel today. And if you had said before the season that all that would be accomplished, losing Anthony Richardson multiple times early and then for the entire season, nobody would have believed you. Like, this is really a remarkable turnaround to do it all with your backup quarterback.
And let's not forget the Jonathan Taylor stuff early in the season. I mean, not just the drama, but he missed 4 games on IR. Like, this is probably your best football player on that team, maybe Quentin Nelson, whatever, DeForest Buckner. He's one of your top 5 football players, and he missed the first month. We didn't even know he was going to play for them at all. And Steichen was part of the cast that kind of managed that whole situation pretty well. He's done a heck of a job. The Colts they're not a great football team, but I'm with you. I enjoy watching them because they scrap, they battle, they're well coached. They win. They find ways to win games, where a lot of these teams we talk about just don't find ways to win games.
So the Colts are good. The Texans are good. The Jags are good. That covers the whole division. Oh, wait. There's one team left in the division, and they won today. Tennessee won today. Tennessee beat Carolina 17-10. Hurrah. Huzzah. Give the governor a harumph. I mean, you can say all of your little isms here. They got a win that was just... I'm not going to lie to you, Frank. I had it on the side screen, and every time I looked over at it, I thought, man, this is trash. And I heard Adam Amin at the beginning of the game made some reference to, like, thanks. If you're watching this, you are the diehards. So thank you so much. Like, this game was awful. Carolina is awful. Bryce Young is nowhere near where I thought he should be at this point. Apparently, Tepper, the owner of Carolina, was seen shouting the F word, naughty, as he left the locker room after the game. Like, I can't find a compelling reason that Frank Reich should still be the coach of of Carolina after this season.
Yeah, I think the only question now is, does he get fired before the end of the season or after? Like, I don't even think. I don't know. I don't dislike Frank Reich, but it's gone really sour for him in a hurry. And David Tepper's not dealing with this. And Reich hasn't done a good job. He's not put Bryce Young in positions to win. There's a play that I thought summed it all up. And by the way, I didn't watch much of this game either. I was watching actually that Giants-Patriots game more because it was just so bad. And the Patriots, we'll talk about them in a second, but it was like, it was a car wreck. It was you at Target on Black Friday. I couldn't take my eyes off of what I was seeing. Like, oh my God, Mac Jones, what did you just do? Where this game was just so bland and boring and bad. But I was watching at the end, seeing if Bryce Young could get it together. It's 4th and 6, and they run this really bad receiver screen. They get stuffed. DJ Chark gets stuffed immediately, and it's like, what are we doing here? Like, that's how little trust you have Bryce Young. That's the best play you have on 4th and 6 with the game on the line. It's still only a 7-point game. And I thought that just summed up Frank Reich this year, where it's just ain't going well for him. He works for an owner that isn't patient. He already kind of took some shots at the owner earlier in the year by saying, oh, I have conversations with him all the time, and they're not great. So, yeah, it'd be shocking to me to see Frank Reich back next season. And yes, we'll make fun of David Tepper for firing another coach, but I don't know any way around it. There hasn't been enough where I've been like, yeah, he's the right guy. They're just losing games. No, there's just not a lot there.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd say, the only reason that it makes sense to keep Reich till the end of the season for me is they've already put 2 different play callers in the ear of Bryce Young during the course of this season because of the changes they've made. I just think the back and forth is only stunting development even more. Like, at some point, just stay out of the kid's head, stay out of the kid's way, let him try and develop. But I'm with you. Tennessee won this football game.
Real quick, do you think he should be sat down? Because I do. I think they should start Andy Dalton the rest of the year.
I would love that. I would love, actually, if they want to fire him and start Andy Dalton and be like, hey, we're not going to spend any more time wrecking this kid. We're going to start over with somebody that knows what he's doing. God, I would be all in for that. And I can already hear Titans fans in my mentions being like, how'd you not even, okay, you beat Carolina. Everybody's beat Carolina. Relax. Like, you didn't look great. Let's judge Will Levis after he plays a good team. You mentioned the Giants and the Jets. Let's just get through the barrel of suck quickly here. Mac Jones, again, benched for Bailey Zappi. Jones threw a couple of picks. Also fumbled. The Patriots recovered it, but just a stupid mishandling of the football again. And this was just, this is terrible. These two teams suck, Frank. There's no nice way to say it. Both of these teams suck.
They were on their way to a 7-7 tie, and I was like, that's what these two teams deserve. Can you imagine? Let me ask you this. You're a Giants. Let's say you're a Giants lifelong season ticket holder, lifelong fan, die hard every Sunday. If you had tickets to this game, you going?
No.
No,
one of my best friends is a Giants fan, and he plays in a rec league that started, and he originally told him, hey, I can't play, like he plays basketball in a rec league, and he originally told him he couldn't start till the end of the season, and then he last week was like, no, I'll play this game. And he's one of those, he watches every, like I do with the Raiders, he watches every minute, and he's reached the boiling point where he's like, no, I'm going to go play basketball with my friends. I'm like, that's why, to do that to a lifelong diehard, that's tough to do, and they've accomplished it.
Yeah, and he didn't miss anything either. This game was awful. And I was stunned the Patriots started Mac Jones. I mean, when he got benched in London with less than 2 minutes left, you're like, it's over. They can't go back to him now. And they did. And he looked even worse. He made about 5-7 plays this game. They were just like, you are not an NFL quarterback. And I don't know if he could be rebuilt or whatever. He still does have that great rookie season on his resume. So maybe those skills are still there. Somebody else can get it out of him. But I mean, I don't know what he's doing. He is so lost right now. It's so bad. Bailey Zappi came in and he looked better. A lot of people are like, well, why go to Bailey Zappi? He stinks too. You're to the point the Jets were, where you're like, anybody else. We just got to try. We know Tim Boyle stinks. We know Bailey Zappi stinks. We got to try anything else at this point because it's just, you can't keep trotting Mac Jones out there. He was that bad where it's just like, he can't play anymore. He can't play again this season if you're the Patriots. I'd be stunned if they went back to him, but I was stunned they went to him today. It was just, I don't know what Belichick's doing. And they still had a chance to tie the game. This kind of sums up the Patriots. You still have a chance to tie the game. They, I think, have a 35-yard field goal to tie it. And Chad Ryland, a rookie who they spent a 4th-round pick on. This Patriots team has no talent. This roster stinks. And they used a 4th-round pick on a kicker, and he just shanks it. It's okay. All right, Patriots. Just exit stage right. I don't want to talk about you again this season. You're a bad, bad football team, and you're really becoming unwatchable.
With Tankathon, I see New England currently as the 3 pick. I think that's based on the half game difference here right now. But either way, New England is looking at a top 3 pick. The Giants have the 6th pick, but the Giants pick up a 4th win. And that's substantial because that puts the Giants 2 wins out of that third. Everybody that has 4 wins is going to have a hard time trying to catch up. If the goal is to have a top 3 pick, I don't know that you can get four wins and have any shot at it. As crazy as that sounds, I just don't think that we're going to see Carolina, frankly, win another football game all year, and that means Chicago will end up with the first pick. Arizona has 2 wins right now. While they've played well at times, they just aren't good enough to win a lot of football games. And New England picking 3rd right now at 2-9. So I feel like this was a substantial statement for the Giants. Great win, fine. You go to 4, you get your 4th win, but at 4-8, they're just going to be bad enough to suck and not bad enough to get a top pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say this. Look, I was critical, to use a word, of Tommy DeVito. Basically saying, who is this guy? He shouldn't even be an NFL quarterback. He's actually looked kind of good the last 2 weeks. I mean, I don't know where this is going or anything, but hats off to him for at least not being the guy who had 44 yards at the end of the Cowboys game. The guy who completed 2 passes the game before that. He's actually made some strides. But that probably just says how bad the Patriots are right now. It's just, man, it's just awful for them. That's just there's just nothing there. There's nothing there at that Patriots team.
Speaking of terrible quarterback play, we had that in the Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game. Not from Kenny Pickett this time. It should be pointed out, the change of Matt Canada reap immediate dividends. Now, whenever you have a new offensive play caller, I do think that there's a little bit of a disadvantage to the other team trying to figure out what you're going to call. But frankly, the Pittsburgh gets over 400 yards on offense, which is stunning. Kenny Pickett has a good day. It's the first time all year they outgained their opponents. They win 16-10. But I really just sat there with Cincinnati thinking, man, if this doesn't prove the value and MVP status of a quarterback like Joe Burrow, I don't know what does. Because, I mean, there was nothing happening for the Bengals without their starting quarterback.
No, I actually didn't think Browning was that bad, but it was just kind of, you knew they weren't going to win. They weren't going to score. Like, he wasn't an abject disaster or anything like that. I thought he was at least somewhat functional as a quarterback, but they're not going. It just stinks. It just, if you're a Bengals fan, you're like, that holding call in Super Bowl 2 years ago cost us a championship. We don't agree with that. Roughing the passer when Mahomes was going out of bounds, unnecessary roughness that led to the field goal, won the AFC Championship game for them. And now it's like, we've wasted another season. We're not going anywhere this year. We're not going to the playoffs. You're 5-6. Jake Browning probably isn't taking you there. I can't say he's going to turn into Nick Foles overnight and take you to a title or anything. So it just stinks. It stinks for Cincinnati that this season's just done. Like, you can't have any hope that it's going to turn around. You've just wasted another year. And now you're a year further down the road. With Pittsburgh, all of a sudden, Pat Freiermuth is back and stuff like that, where you're just like, where was this before? And Matt Canada had never had an offense get 400 yards. The first game without him, they post one. I thought I was telling. They still were great. Like, I mean, they put up 16 points. Like, okay, good for you. I still don't think the Steelers team's out of the woods or anything, but it just, this game to me is just showing, like, sorry, Bengals, try again next year because this season's done.
So here's one alarming number, and I think part of what did stand out watching the game is the game was running with a really slow pace. Like, everything was very, it was stuck in the mud. And I was sort of supported by that when I looked at the numbers, because Browning, you're right, was not bad. 19-26, 227, that's fine. The Bengals ran the ball 11 times total, and that includes their quarterback running 3 times. Joe Mixon only had 8 rushes for 16 yards. And this continues a trend that we've seen all the way back to the rookie year of Joe Burrow with Zach Taylor. Like, they just abandon the run all the time, and they just shovel their guy out there, and they're like, hey, hope you don't get murdered throwing the football 4,000 times. Like, there is no attempt at balance. I thought we might see a little bit more of that, and there was just none of it. Like, to only have run the ball with your running backs 8 times in this game, and to have that limited a snap count when your quarterback's 19-26, he wasn't 45 of 55 and you ran the ball 8 times. It just shows you that they weren't able to ever get drives going. Like, they weren't able to sustain anything. And on the other side of it, I think the whole world has seen the social media sensation at this point of the Deontay Johnson just taking a play off.
That did look good.
That's bad
especially
look,
for a
man.
coach like Tomlin. Ooh, man. Yeah, that receiver room for the Steelers, right? Like George Pickens and now Deontay Johnson just saying, I'll get back to you next play. Whatever. Like, I don't want this one. I'm good. Like, that was a bad rep. Let's put it that way. That is not something you want on film. But yeah, they do it. I mean, with the Bengals in the run game, I think part of it too, though, you have to say, when you're getting like 1 yard every time you run the ball, it's like, Zach Taylor's probably like, what am I going to do? Run on 2nd and 9? Like, nothing's working at that point. And even Browning's stats, I clearly remember 2 plays where balls, I think both Jamar Chase caught both, where balls went through the receiver's, Steelers defender's hands. It should have been intercepted. It just ends up it chases hands and he gets a gain out of it. So it wasn't like Browning was just dealing or anything. He was just not a failure. But just not a pretty football game at all.
Maybe that's the best way to describe Atlanta, New Orleans, too. Not a pretty football game at all, but significant. The Falcons get the NFC South lead. They get the win over the Saints, 24-15. Desmond Ritter's return did not look particularly good to me. I still have absolutely no confidence. This changed nothing that I think about the Falcons, but hey, they got the win. Like, I'm not trying to be a jerk to everybody listening, but like, I don't know a nice way to say it, man.
Yeah, they're first place somehow, some way, and I don't even get how. Well, I do get how, and it's because Derek Carr made the one play that broke their back. Like, he telegraphs a throw. Jesse Bates did a good job baiting him. I get that. No pun intended there. It makes a 92-yard pick six, and that's just the game. And Derek Carr ends up with 3 or 4 yards. Well, who cares? Like, it was just empty calories. Derek Carr signed a $150 million deal, and he ain't it. He's not playing to that level. He's not getting them over the hump. I wrote about this in Winners and Losers today, that it's just there's a reason the Saints are 5-6 with a lot of talent in that team, and it's because Derek Carr is not making enough winning plays, basically. And it's tough to put that all on one guy. It's not all his fault, but he's the one with a $150 million contract and $100 million guaranteed, and they're not getting out of that anytime soon. So, yeah, look at his Falcons team, and I'm like, well, good for you. You finally figured out, get the ball to Desmond Ridder and Drake London. That's a pretty good idea. And that did sustain their offense a little bit, but Ritter's just not there. And this was a perfect NFC South game where you're like, this is for first place in the division. Probably whoever wins this game, and good chance to win the division. And this game stunk. Like, both of these teams are bad. Like, this is just the NFC South this season.
Yeah, I will say quickly before we move on, this is the only stat that I would read everybody. First score for New Orleans was a groupie 25-yard field goal. The next one was a long 52-yard field goal. Fine. After that, a groupie 41-yard field goal. After that, a 45-yard field goal. And after that, a 39-yard field goal. I say that because what we saw in this game was just a magnification of what we've seen the entire career of Derek Carr. Great from the 20 to the 20. You get to the red zone and everything's cramped in. He has a pick six that changes the game. And 5 times they're in there, 4 times they were in there, they settle for chip shot field goals because there's just no execution. And when you have Olave and Kamara, and this has been a problem on multiple teams, you have to look at the quarterback and say, what in the hell are you doing wrong? So, and they're not going to fix it. It's never been fixed, and that means they're going to be stuck. The Rams not stuck. The Rams get a big win over Arizona. Did you have any big takeaway from this? It just felt like Arizona's bad, the Rams are pretty good, and the Rams beat up on them.
Yeah, just that Arizona's defense is awful. I picked Arizona in this game, and pretty early on, I'm just like, I forgot their defense is this bad. Like, it's the worst defense in the NFL. It's not going to get any better. Kyler might win a shootout here or there the rest of the year, but they're just screaming towards probably the number 2 pick of the draft, I guess, because I'm with you. I don't think Carolina's winning another game. So, yeah, Cardinals just brutal on offense or on defense, but credit to the Rams. I mean, Kyron Williams looked great in his return. Matthew Stafford threw 4 touchdowns. Good for them. Nice to win. But I think this said everything about the Cardinals defense. It just is going to just screw the rest of their season over. I mean, they're just not. They're a bad football team.
And they still got to figure out what they're doing with Kyler Murray. So we got to see every week is just more film and adjustment to what this staff is going to do with Kyler Murray 100%. I'm with you. I don't think there was a bigger takeaway from that. Also, as much as I expected my beloved Raiders to get blown out by the Chiefs, we were texting early on. The Raiders go out to a big 14-0 lead early. Could have been 17-0 and then melt down. But here's the interesting thing to me. I had a buddy that covers the league at a really high level that I trust a lot that texted me and said, man, every week this team seems to come out with the new staff with a really good plan and it works well. And then the minute there's an adjustment, there's no counter adjustment. And I think that's a fair criticism right now of the staff and of the quarterback. Like you mentioned earlier, Aiden O'Connell has shown some nice things. I just don't think, what we see in the second half for the Raiders every week is the same thing. This was a close game at half. This was a close game going into the fourth quarter. They can't get the ball to Devontae once adjustments are made. The quarterback doesn't process fast enough, and an okay football team got beat by a pretty good football team, and that's the easiest way to say it.
Yeah, I agree. I was a little too high on the, oh my God, the Raiders are great. They would have been a playoff team, but Josh not been their coach all season. And then you just kind of realize that there are a lot of shortcomings. I mean, they were up 14-0, and I'm like, wow, the Chiefs are in real trouble here. And then they weren't. You're right. The Raiders really kind of just fizzled after that and never really did much. And that is on this coaching staff. And they're going to have to show. There's a lot of things this is an absolute full-blown audition for them. I think they've mostly been good. Like, there's a lot of good things coming out of the Raiders, but they fell apart pretty hard in the second half. And you need to play a much, much better game to beat the Chiefs, and they just didn't.
Yeah, and Kelsey went off. The numbers don't necessarily show what an impact he had. His catches were all huge. Rashee Rice, 8 games, $107 there. It's funny, but I'll give you the opposite side of it for a second. If I told you coming in that Aiden O'Connell would have had over 100 for a passer rating, that Josh Jacobs would touch the ball over 25 times and have over 100 yards rushing, the Raiders would have no penalties and no turnovers, and Max Crosby somehow would play, you would think, oh my God, that's the game they won. They didn't. And it just speaks to how close the game was until the game wasn't. And it also speaks to the fact that Kansas City's a little like Miami. You can hold them down for a while, but at some point, they're going to make those 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 plays. How do you get momentum back when they score a bunch of points? I don't think the Raiders know that. And Kansas City, a little like the Eagles we talked about earlier, there's just never a point where it feels like Mahomes feels like the game is out of his control. So, kudos to them for getting another big one.
I will say that I think the biggest story out of this game and the biggest story moving forward is Rashee Rice, their rookie receiver. They're desperate for some help at receiver. I mean, we all saw the game against the Eagles where their receivers are it's just not good enough to be a championship receiver room. Really, Mahomes could lift up guys on his shoulders and win a Super Bowl with anybody, basically. But you look at these receivers and it's like, can they just get somebody? And I've been saying for a while, Rashee Rice is the only possible answer they have. I don't know if Rashee Rice is the answer, but at some point that staff just has to be like, he's our best guy. Let's just see. Let's just give him 10 targets like they did today. No other wide receiver had more than 3 targets today. And it turned out really well. I mean, like you said, 8 for 107 and a touchdown. I thought Rashee Rice really looked good because he's a good player. He's the best receiver they got. This is who they got to ride. For better or worse, this is what it's got to be. First game they really, really featured him, I thought turned out really well. And this could be a harbinger of things to come. Rashee Rice, I think, is a pretty good player. He's probably being pushed along a little quicker than they want him to, but this is their key to maybe getting that receiver room right.
For better or for worse could be the way that I term the Sunday night football game, because we got some better with Baltimore and we got some worse with the Chargers. And this was a game that I thought proved a lot of things. I said at the beginning that today's action proved things. Well, my question was going to be, what's the tight end position look like? Because it's so important to the Ravens. What would it look like with no Mark Andrews? Would it mean more target share for Zay Flowers? Would it mean more opportunity for him? What was that going to look like was a huge question that needed to be answered. But then also, what do the Chargers look like, and can they get anything sustained going? I think we sort of got the answer on both sides of it, man. It feels like the Chargers are lost, and this season is a lost cause for them. And Baltimore is right, as they have been for much of the year. They find ways to win, even when you look at it and say, man, that wasn't as pretty as I thought it was going to be, but damn, they look good.
I like teams that, hey, our offense sucks today, but our defense is just going to dominate and we're going to win a game. Like that, and that's exactly what happened with the Ravens today. I mean, they got and by the way, for all of us Ravens -3 people, thank you, Zay Flowers, for not taking the knee there. Thank you. Appreciate that. Go find that end zone, young man, and get me the cover. But this game was a slog for Baltimore. Just because they ended up with 20 doesn't make it any better. They just broke a run at the end when the Chargers really, you're trying to get the ball back. I thought the Ravens defense was excellent, but look, at some point, we have to sit down and have a real conversation about Justin Herbert. Is Justin Herbert good? Where is it? Well, if you are this good, if you are that dude making $250 million plus, when you get the ball at the end, you take your team downfield. You don't score 1 touchdown at home the entire game. I get it. There's not much there other than Keenan Allen. Your coach is probably getting fired because he's not good enough. But last year was, Joe Lombardi's the problem. We switch to Kellen Moore. Everything's going to be great. Well, it's kind of the same thing. I don't know. I'm not sitting here saying I think Justin Herbert should be out of the league or anything, but we've all just given him a scholarship since his rookie year. This guy's great. He's awesome. Well, okay, that makes winning plays in the fourth quarter. I'm kind of a little bit out on Justin Herbert. At some point, you have to elevate your teammates. That's kind of the job, and he hasn't done that well enough for me.
Hasn't done it particularly in big games, right? Because we saw the playoff implosion for the Chargers. I'd also argue the season-ending game where the Chargers-Raiders, the winner was going to go to the playoffs. There was opportunity there. It didn't come together. I think what's interesting to me when we talk about Justin Herbert is it feels like every time there's a take on him, people talk about the injury history. And it's well, this was hurt, that was hurt, and this is impacting it. And I get that. But I also think it's interesting how when we apply that conversation to somebody like Lamar, we immediately come in and say injury prone. But if you say that about Justin Herbert, it's no. These are just freak incidents that have happened. Realistically, even when you say he doesn't have necessarily the weapons. Keenan Allen is a great wide receiver, and Austin Eckler is a stud. Like, there is no doubt about it. Like, there are plenty of teams that would kill to have a superstar wide receiver and a superstar running back with a superstar quarterback, and that's what the Chargers are supposed to have. The funny thing is, I think we've heaped all of the blame on Brandon Staley. Like, this is all Staley's fault. It'll be interesting to see what happens when they make a regime change, because I think that's inevitable. Will it still all be Staley's fault? Like, at some point, Herbert will have to take some of the blame if you keep changing coaches and it doesn't change the result.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is their defense played more than well enough to win tonight, and the offense had 10 points. If you want to be a great quarterback, if you want to be a great team, that can't be the answer at the end of the day.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, too, because Baltimore, like I said, had a lot to prove in their rhythm, and I thought they had some of that at times, but also I thought that the loss of Mark Andrews would be wildly significant for them. So seeing Likely step up a little bit and have a nice little game is the beginning of that, and seeing Zay sort of continue to blossom. He's really good. I think he's going to be great.
Yeah, he's one of those guys who I'd like to see really take off late in the season. As we see a lot of rookie receivers do, like Amon-Ra St. Brown a few years ago. Like, when he was a rookie, he was awesome the last 6 weeks. I think Zay could kind of have that finish of the season too. And if that does happen, even though they don't have Mark Andrews, and their offense did sputter a little bit today, I mean, no question about that without Mark Andrews. But if Zay kind of takes off, that could make up the difference there. And I think he could. He's got the talent for it, man. He's a really, really fun player.
So we get a big Monday night matchup, Bears and Vikings. Not big for the Bears, I get that, but big for the Vikings as they try and continue to find this playoff juice without their starting quarterback. What are you excited for in this?
To see if Justin Fields, we're going to get the great Justin Fields. He's going to make plays, he's going to make those highlight plays. But I'm really interested by the fact that, and not that everything is about betting, but Minnesota's only -3 in this game, right? Like, it was like, really? That's it? But I think that's because everybody's so scared of Justin Fields that you're not just like, well, the Vikings are a far better team. But Justin Fields, that kind of dude that could take a game over. He's played in primetime games before, against Washington this year, against New England last year. So I'm interested Justin Fields is the most compelling player in this game, without a doubt. But I'm also interested to see, can the Vikings get back on track? They took a tough loss last week on the road against a surging Broncos team. That does happen. How do you respond to that? Do you come back and get a win? I think they do. I think the Vikings are a really, really well-coached team. I think they get a win against a bad Bears team, but there's the Justin Fields thing out there.
I think both of these quarterbacks are actually sort of auditioning, right? Because Josh Dobbs plays the way he played.
Different ways, yep.
There's going to be a market for him next year. And Justin Fields is trying to show the world, hey, if Chicago chooses to press reset at the quarterback position, I have value, right? And I think both of them do have value. So it's fun to watch and see, okay, where are they going and what's that mean for each of them? Like, because you're right, the Bears are a bad football team. The Vikings are a better team with a better coach. The question is, can they get consistent play continually out of the Pastronaut, right? Like, that's what we're all like, can this Disney story continue? I think just that in and of itself makes it interesting, but I'm with you. I think Minnesota wins this game simply because, top to bottom, they're a better football team. It's also at home. But man, like, two things I know, Justin Fields is going to have market, and it seems like, again, not always about gambling. The bettors are always wrong. The line setters are always wrong about Justin Fields' rushing numbers on Monday Night Football. Monday and Thursdays, they're always low on it. So I'm just telling you, hammer the over on yards rushing.
Hey, look at you. I will say this kind of, like, the NFL changes so fast, right? It's a week-to-week league. The Vikings can't afford a loss here because the Packers are all of a sudden right behind them. Like, we're talking about wild card spots. Man, I'm not ruling the Packers making a run out here. Like, that is a team that's surging. So the Vikings have to be like, we can't screw around and turn us into a losing streak, or we're going to lose our grip on that one of the wild card spots.
Which just tells us all that maybe the glory of this season is that there are some really bad teams competing for the playoffs. Like, there's going to be just some bad teams.
Yeah, those 6-7 seeds are like, ooh, boy, really? We got to watch this on a Saturday afternoon on wild card weekend? Hey.
I literally laughed out loud when at one point they brought up the in the hunt column, and I was like, Bad. All of us should go home.
And then you got the Buffalo Bills sitting there like, what? One of these things is not like the other?
That's the one if we go back to June and just like, hey, what if I told you? You'd slap me in the face. What if I told you that's where we'd be? I know this. Charles McDonald will be back on Tuesday with the Exempt List. Make sure you're hanging out with him. I'll be back on Wednesday with Charles Robinson and Jory Epstein for our inside coverage as we do every single week. You can leave us a voicemail. SpeakPipe. I can read. SpeakPipe.com/0blitz. That's the way you can get it off your chest. SpeakPipe.com/0blitz. Follow us on Twitter at Yahoo Schwab, at Jason Fitz for me and Stone doing God's work behind the glass. Our producer extraordinaire at SJ Rochelle. That's how you can follow him. Leave us that 5-star review. Rate, subscribe. Tell your friends, your family, and enemies. Tell everybody to hang out with us every single week. We will be back next Sunday. Oh, I'm already excited for it. We'll be back with you. Thanks for hanging out with us.